Alright, so with 8 movies to talk about, obviously one of them was going to get the shit end of the stick. And it turns out that of the 8, the least interesting one seems to be, well, for better or worse, Jeepers Creepers 3, which, if you did see this, was likely on the Sci-Fi Channel, which says a lot. Even though I do believe it did get like a very small release in theaters, very few theaters, and it was highly anticipated for a long time. And I'm not in that group, but a lot of people really like 2, which and I obviously am not much of a fan, but if you saw the video I did earlier this month, or last month, I really loved the first one, and it was interesting to me. I didn't know till I was watching it that this one takes place within the middle, in between 1 and 2. I guess I should mention real quick the reason I'm doing it this way is because I'm just going to do this really fast and then go into the ones that I'm going to go into in full, because there's really not a lot to say about this one, regardless of all the hype around it. So it pretty much takes place that night. They talk about the Torch Church still. I guess this is just after Justin Long has been taken away. And they took some turns with this one that I wasn't sure I was quite on board with. One of my favorite aspects of the first movie was how fucking scary the truck is. So they seemed to want to go with that, and maybe that seemed like a good idea on paper, but the execution here, I don't know, because it's like they almost wanted to turn the truck into its own killer, which I don't know, because it's like booby-trapped, and now it has like these animated looking bombs that come out of it. It has like that spear thing. I don't know. It seemed like they really wanted to make the truck a bigger deal, but I don't know that they went about that the best way, but I don't think it's a terrible idea either. And so I do like that for the most part it takes place during the day, and they were able to do something with that because it takes away from the whole some of the scariest stuff is the fact that it happens during the day, because you expect the scary stuff to be at night, so it's a little more jarring when it happens. But at the same time, because of this, we get a lot of his face. I know we get a fair amount of face in the first movie, and I vaguely remember us getting a little bit in the second. But we've never seen his face more than we have now. And that kind of takes away from him a little bit, even though I guess it's technically like it's not like they're hiding something, because we know what he looks like, but still, I don't know. And then, yeah, basically, it just feels very, even though it did have that theatrical release, it does very much feel like it's just something on the Sci-Fi Channel. Everything looks they've got that TV movie CGI, they've got the slow-mo going on, and for the most part, it just feels like not a lot is happening. We got the Creighton Duke-like guy looking for him, who has a story kind of like Ray Wise in the second movie, where it's like, dude we've pretty much never seen before, but he's supposed to have some history about this. But for a while, it just kind of felt like the movie was just kind of going in circles, and it wasn't really doing a whole lot. Until, like, the last half hour, it does kind of kick into gear a little bit, but then it has no damn climax. The movie has no ending. It's like, it sets up to be like it's going to be the one I did talk about how I was concerned about them going into his origins, which I wasn't a big fan of that idea, but it's like they're going to go in that direction, and it's going to be the start of a climax, but then it's just over. And they do the whole sequel baiting thing. So yeah, I just really feel like at the end of the day, while this did have some effective moments, it does have one of those instances where it's like he does the damage and then he comes back, and how it has that kind of effect. But yeah, for the most part, once it was said and done, it's like, wow, that was just kind of a fucking waste of time, wasn't it? So really all this was like a giant trailer for a fourth movie you're gonna do. So yeah, it took you this long to do this one. Why not just make it a big advertisement that you're doing a fourth movie? So that's what that ended up being. Not a whole lot. Though I did go on a little longer than I expected. That's probably maybe could have been its own segment. But now that that's out of the way, let's get into the really big stuff. We're going to start with Jigsaw, if you can call it that. It's starting. So this is 7 years. It doesn't feel like the final chapter, the 3D one, was 7 years ago, does it? But it was the one with Sean Patrick Flannery, where they supposedly wrapped it all up. They brought Carrie Elwes back, all that stuff, gave it this nice big finish. So it's like, this really didn't need a continuation. I remember them talking about it for a long time, and it was like, is it going to be a prequel? Is it going to be a sequel? Is it going to be a reboot? What is it? And it's kind of one of those cases where I don't know that they've really put it out there, but obviously when you watch the movie, you find out exactly which one of those it is. But in the meantime, it's brought to us by the directors are the guys that have kind of like, they do have experience in this genre, but in very different ways. Because they did Daybreakers, the vampire movie with Ethan Hawke and Sam Neill, and they also did Predestination with Ethan Hawke, which was the really trippy sci-fi movie with all the twists in it, with Sarah Snook is amazing in. And they did a movie a while back called Undead, which is this really fucked up, crazy-ass zombie movie that's actually a lot more than a zombie movie. They pretty much threw every possible thing they could throw in there. It's a huge, gigantic mess, but it's worth seeing just to see all the shit they put in it. So track that down if you didn't see it. These are the guys that made this and that. But they don't really bring any of that craziness from those other 3 movies. Even Daybreakers had some pretty crazy shit in it for more or less being a run-of-the-mill kind of vampire / almost like Resident Evil type movie. But this is a Saw movie. It looks like a Saw movie, it acts like a Saw movie. Every aspect of it is a fucking Saw movie, which I guess, is, which, I suppose it's kind of lose-lose. You either make the exact same thing, or you go off the beaten path, and people say that it doesn't feel like a Saw movie, thus it sucks. So, yeah, but for the most part, I think people go into a Saw movie wanting a Saw movie, so I suppose good on them for accomplishing that. And we do have a new array of characters here. None of them stand out, except for the fact that one of them is Mandela Van Peebles, the son of Mario and grandson of Melvin. Not sure how Van Peebles ended up in a Saw movie, especially a recent one, but that's what we do. And we're cutting back and forth a lot. Because there's also a procedural going on, obviously, much like the Danny Glover scenes in the original movie. So this is par for the course here, the jump back and forth between the traps and procedural aspect of it. But then there's also this thing going on with 2 pathologists who are kind of in this investigation as well. And while they do serve a purpose, they kind of become important in the movie at a point that feels very much like it just really suddenly gets sidetracked. If there's one thing that's really off about this movie, it's the way it's put together, and that's always one of the kind of main things about a Saw movie is the way it's edited and the way everything kind of fits together like a puzzle. So the fact that this movie is really sloppily put together is kind of one of its major downsides, because a lot of the time it's meant to be a little confusing because you're trying to put some pieces together, but I also think it's confusing when it's not supposed to be, just because it's so damn all over the place, and what exactly they're showing us is so kind of it's so disproportionate. So like if we kind of set this off to where it became clear to us earlier that we were going to be branching off in so many different directions, it might seem a little cleaner. But now it just feels like it's very unfocused, and like it doesn't know what the fuck it wants to show us. Like when they got to the editing process, it felt very unplanned at the start. So that's kind of a bummer throughout it. But that's not to say that it doesn't have effective moments in it. There's one scene that I really like that's kind of a bit of a bamboozle of sorts, where you kind of think you're seeing something and you think you're following something. It's the scene with the jogger. When we see this woman and she prepares to go running through the park or whatever it is, and we're just kind of following her, and we think they set it up enough to where we think this is going to be some major character. But this is actually just some random person with no importance whatsoever that is here to give us a reveal of something else. So I thought that was kind of a nice fake out and well done. But for the most part, I like that kind of stuff to where like that might seem like it's part of the whole unfocused criticism, but I think that kind of stuff works. The stuff that doesn't really work is when we're in the middle of a trap and then we cut away from it. Because there was one thing, when I was talking about the original movie, along with Hostel in a video I did like 3 years ago, I was talking about how I commended what Eli Roth did with Hostel because while it is like just constant torture porn, more or less, once it gets to that point, I still commended him for the way that we never cut away from the torture scenes, and that's what made them so freaky, was that they felt really kind of long, and they had enough in there to give them build up before the actual gore happened. And they never cut away to anything else. We stayed in that room with the victims and really kind of gave it that claustrophobic feel that we were trapped as they were. And in this, there are many scenes when we're in the middle of a trap, and much like what Eli Roth did with Hostel, it really helps to stay in the scene when you're doing a scene like that. Because it does help it kind of rise above the torture porn label a little bit, because it at least feels like you're putting in some kind of effort to give it an effect that's not just, ew, gross. There's like the whole dreaded build-up and all that stuff, and just really, like I said, makes you feel like you're in there with them. But you'll be like, and it really takes away from the tension when you'll be right in the moment in this trap and you're not quite sure what's going to happen next, and then we just cut back to the cops for a while. And then we cut back to the cops for so long, you almost forget you were watching a trap scene earlier, and then it cuts back to it. And then by the time the shit starts to go down, it's gone. The high is gone, because were from the tension that built from the earlier moment when the scene started is not there anymore when you're cutting back for the payoff. So that's poorly done. That's a bad idea. And another thing about that is this is the silo scene. And a real problem with this is not only does it take away the tension, it makes it feel like the silo trap goes on forever. By the time it actually gets to what it's going to do, it's kind of like, wow, there's not been a whole lot to this trap, but man, it feels like we spent a lot of time on it. And yeah, there's hardly a payoff to it, as are most of the traps here. And that's the thing, too, to where it's like, what I do like about this movie also is it kind of goes back to the first one, where the gore wasn't a constant. Because the big criticism, obviously, is the sequels are just kind of like trap after trap after trap, and there's pretty much nothing else to them. So it's just constant gore from beginning to end, and that's all the movie has to offer. But here it kind of goes back to, there's enough gore to where it does feel, I guess you could say it feels constant, but it really actually isn't. There's enough of the investigation and the stuff like that to kind of balance it out a little bit and not make it feel like you're just constantly being drenched with blood. But having said that, there's kind of a lack of invention in this movie, which is a problem, because, I mean, I say, like, you don't just want the torture porn and all that, but the thing is you don't necessarily have to be, like, really thirsty for gore to kind of admire the creativity in regards to how the concepts of the traps. So that's kind of, like, you want that creativity to be in there, and that's kind of what the main appeal is after a while. Now that after the first one came out, we pretty much got the gist of it, so pretty much the only thing they had left was the creativity of the traps and an effective twist. Of course, the twists stopped being effective very quickly because it became a very familiar formula after a while. So then the only thing they have now is the creativity of the traps, and the only time the movie can really show kind of some way of invention with the concept as it is. And this one, I mean, to be fair, we do learn that there is a plausible reason why the traps in this movie aren't up to par with what they have been. But still, it's kind of like, this is a whole, regardless of that argument, we've still got a whole movie to sit through, and like I said, this is all the movie has now, is using the traps as a way to show their creativity off, and these don't do that. These traps are very, very basic and very, very simple. You could say, maybe there could be an effectiveness to the simplicity. Take, for instance, the merry-go-round in the 6th movie. Very simple concept, but that scene is still pretty cool. So it can work if it feels like a very simple concept. It's not too over elaborate, but this isn't really that kind of same effective simplicity to me. It just kind of felt like, well, they just kind of really ran out of ideas with the traps here. I felt like, so this almost seems like before Juan and Leonel worked on the first movie, where if they were to have like concepts of what the traps would have been that they ultimately didn't use, it was like just to build up from their creativity to get better before they actually put the real traps in the movie. It's kind of like, these are the ones that seem like they'd be like the blueprints of like, oh well, we can scrap that, we can get more creative than that. So yeah, but like I said, there is an argument to that, but I still don't think that necessarily completely shrugs off the criticism. And there's also, we were talking about the characters, and yeah, there is one particular character in this movie that I'm sure we're probably supposed to hate. Sometimes you can't really tell for sure, but and this is the guy that you can't tell if he's gonna be like the strong one or the sarcastic asshole one or the comedy relief one. He's kind of trying to be all those things at once, leaving the other characters with nothing else to do. There's pretty much enough characters for each of them to have one of the traits that this guy has, but he's got all of them, and the rest are just there to fill in the gaps. And the problem is, you give the guy all the traits, but he's not very interesting either. He's the guy that says, he sees the Billy puppet come out on his tricycle, and he's like, oh no, that's not creepy at all. It's like, yeah, okay, I get that comedy relief is supposed to break the tension, and he's like, while the trap is happening, he's like spouting off sarcastic bullshit. And it's kind of like, okay, the reason they call it comedy relief is because it typically comes after the horror, not in the fucking middle of it, to completely tear down the whole reason for this scene, is to build terror, and scares or whatever, or tension at least. But yeah, so that wasn't working. This character wasn't working in that sense because he just kind of wanted to be the one thing the whole time. And it doesn't help also that when he is the comedy relief, not only is he fucking up traps by doing that shit in the middle, it's not funny. So that's a real problem with your comedy relief, if you can call him that, because he's so many things. I don't know. But yeah, and they do. Yeah, as I'm remembering it, there is more gore in it than I'm remembering now. Like there's the half decapitated guy they find at the beginning that's on the slab. They just kind of linger on him for much longer than they probably need to, just to kind of soak up the whole, hey, we're a Saw movie, look how gory we are thing. But still, it doesn't feel like it necessarily wallows in the gore, except for a few instances like that. But that's not even trap related. That's just a dead dude. So it just happens to be laying around. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of mixed feelings about this one. There is, I know, they seem to mostly be negative, but it's not something I'd call a bad movie. It's got bad acting, but I guess that's, once again, par for the course. Tobin Bell is still, you know, obviously they have to use him sparingly because of the end of the third movie, and yeah, we're on fucking 8 now. But, yeah, but for the most part, it does kind of feel like the same thing, and it does kind of do the whole... when there's not gore, obviously it's just the cop stuff, but the cop stuff we've seen plenty of times before, not just in Saw movies, but in every movie ever, in every stupid crime TV show ever. And so you take that and, you know, what do we have? It doesn't have a whole lot to offer. Obviously, you know, it's a fucking Saw movie, you know there's going to be some kind of twist. And while it does certainly turn you on your head a little bit, still just the overall thing about it is just kind of like, even so, even so, it still feels like the Saw movie is just gonna have the same twist, just with varying, people. So, yeah, but like I said, that stuff in between, it isn't necessarily bad. It's just kind of the same old stuff, really. That a more kind of attentive editor might have been able to even out a little more than we ultimately got. So, yeah, it's a Saw movie, so take that for what you will. It took me how many minutes just to fucking say it's a Saw movie, whatever. Our next movie is going to be Happy Death Day. Yet another venture following Edge of Tomorrow and then Before I Fall. In this, for some reason, every genre wants to do the Groundhog Day thing now. We've done it with comedy, we've done it with teenage drama, we've done it with sci-fi, now we've done it with horror. Okay. What's next? War. Even that almost feels like Edge of Tomorrow. So, I do like that, like, the start of it, and the idea of using this concept for a horror movie. Like, when you look at Before I Fall, it's kind of like, well, this kind of seems like an odd environment to use this concept. But, the concept actually kind of works in the context of a horror movie, and the whole idea of the use it to find out who your killer is thing, it's very easy. I'm sure this movie was very easy to come up with the pre-existing idea, just with the slasher movie thrown in. And I have been saying for a while, we need a comeback with the slasher movie. There's too many goddamn, like, ghosts and, like, monsters and shit. Like, just a dude with a knife, it'd be cool to see that kind of have a comeback in an effective way. Or at least in a cheesy way. So, I guess we could start with this in that direction. And they do the spin on the concept where she starts to realize, this is the first time she realizes she's in a loop, and she knows what's coming. The way that scene sets up with, like, the little music box, whatever that was, and the tunnel and shit, and it's like she's been here before and she knows what's coming, and it gives you that creepy factor where when we know it's coming actually makes it creepier than it was the first time. So for a while I thought it was really well done in that sense, and the way they do the whole thing where the character is just like a straight up bitch, and we see her being mean to pretty much everybody. So, like, just in the introduction scene, every damn buddy in this movie is a suspect. Like, she's pissed off everybody. So they're doing a really good job here to set it up. And they actually do something really clever that I liked when it was the second loop. When, like I said, she's still just now kind of figuring out, like, maybe the day before was maybe a dream, maybe she's in a loop, she's still trying to figure it out. And the first time around, we saw the person in the pig mask kind of turn around and watch her as she went towards the tunnel. And it's like, well, there it is, And then, the second time around, we realized that wasn't even him. That was just some dude that was in a group that was straggling. So I did like the way they kind of used those little fake outs like that. But then the movie kept going. And after a while I wasn't so sure. I wonder, like, if you were to watch my face while I was watching this, if you could watch it, like, gradually just drop as the movie kept going. Because with the concept, I do kind of get taking this approach, but it was very weird to me how we had this nice, creepy, effective opening, and then they show us the second time around, and they show us that doing it again can be even creepier than the first time, and it's a nice setup to use this concept in. And then the movie basically becomes a comedy. Quite suddenly. And this is when you kind of lost me. Starting with the fact that, number one, this concept has already been used as a comedy. That would have been, like, the first time. But then there is this whole character change when she starts to become aware of it and she keeps going through it. And once again, as I talked about with Before I Fall, when we talked about watching the person gradually go through this, when we watched Bill Murray and Groundhog Day do the whole... He had very different emotions every time we went back to him the longer and longer he went through this. And this obviously starts off with, like I said, she's a bitch. She's made everybody angry. Everybody's a suspect now. But then suddenly, when she starts going through it again and again, her character is now, like, unbearably cutesy. I'm not sure where this comes from and how we're supposed to really accept this change so quickly after seeing the kind of person she actually is and what is clearly is what put her in this mess in the first place. But yeah, now she becomes like this walking comedy character where it's almost like her murders start to become borderline slapstick, and we're supposed to be humored by it the further it goes. Not more freaked out, in fact. Which seems to totally negate the direction it seemed like they were going there. Which I guess to some people, because I think this movie has a decent reception. I think people like it. I haven't really looked into it, but I think people like it. It's obviously been out for like almost 4 weeks now, so I'm obviously quite late on this, but to my understanding, I think people liked it, and the thing is maybe they like that fake out, where we think it's gonna be this, possibly cliche horror movie, just another slasher movie, but then they take it in this light comedic direction while also keeping up the fact that she is being murdered multiple times, as well as other people. But the tone just really, really went off the deep end, and I could not get on board with this character suddenly supposed to be, like, lovable and shit. And the whole kind of love story that blossoms, where it's like, she wakes up in this dude's dorm room, and obviously they don't really know each other at the start of each loop. So obviously some kind of love story is going to blossom here, but we know that it's going to have to be... It's like regardless of what all we've seen, at the start of each loop, they have just met, and they don't fucking know each other. And she's probably got this terrible reputation he must know about. So, my memory's a little vague, because it was like 2 weeks ago that I saw this, but I think, I think I've got it. So, I don't... And then they do this whole thing to where it's like, it turns out that they didn't actually do anything. And this is that moment. This is that moment in every movie when she has the epiphany that she might like him. And it's when he says that nothing happened. And so basically her way of thinking, and maybe you could say, oh no, her character is this troubled. It's been this horrible for her love life or whatever. That it's basically triggered by... Her attraction to him is triggered by the fact that he didn't take advantage of her. Like, because she passed out in his dorm all night without him, like, fucking raping her or, like, sleeping with her while she was drunk. Oh, wow, this guy's something special. He didn't do what any rational person would not do. I don't... And we're just supposed to buy that, I guess. Because he becomes a big deal in regards to the stakes of this movie, and the choices that she makes are based on this. So, just the more it goes, the more I'm not fucking feeling it. And like I said, and you could go on the argument of, well, she's been treated so shittily, maybe that's just how she reacts to a dude that actually seems nice to her. In the context of the movie, it just looks like fucking lazy writing. I know that's kind of an easy way out, but I mean, it's like, that's how it came off to me, was just lazy writing. So, and to get to because the movie's so quick to get to the point, just like, everybody wants to do the damn Groundhog Day concept, but nobody wants to use it to its fullest and show the gradual thing, because this is what Before I Fall did. They're in a damn hurry to get to the montage, so that we can fast forward through this. It's like they don't want to play with how the character gradually does things, they just want this, a whole lot of montaging and shit. And that's... Then what's the point? It's because it's going to be like, if you're going to do the character changes in montage form, she's going to be one character at the start and one character at the end that's totally different, but we're not going to know why or what made that happen. It's just going to be one, then the other. A lesson was learned, I guess. And I don't know, I'm not feeling it. And then as far as, going back to the fact that it's a horror movie, something you might forget about an hour into it, when the movie does take a turn, and we start to head in a direction. We're doing the whole, after we do the whole backstory thing, where it's like, pretty much the whole movie she's hinting at her backstory, and then when it finally gets to the point where she's like, oh, this is my love interest, better telling my life story even though we just met, and then she goes through her whole tragic backstory, whatever the fuck, and it's like, we've hinted at so much, and we've pretty much said as much, that by the time we get to the cliche, here's my backstory monologue, we pretty much know all the shit she's already saying. It feels like it's just being repeated back to us what we already know. So that just slows it down even more. But then, like I said, it does take a turn, but it gets to the point to where it's like, when it reaches this point, you think, oh, that's it? Like, that's the big reveal? And of course, it comes pretty early, so any rational human being that's seen a movie in their life will say, you know what? I don't think this is the real reveal. But we spend a lot of time on this, to the point that we pretty much get a climax. Like, our fake climax in this movie is bigger than our real climax. By a lot. So that's... that seems uneven. So... yeah, so yeah, even then, we get, all we're doing is building to a weak climax. So... yeah, overall... And then, of course, you know... they had to have the moment. The ultimate sin of this movie. All the bad shit this movie does, all the misdirection this movie does, like the problems that they shouldn't have, the problems that could have easily been fixed, but they just made the wrong decisions, ultimately results in one line that is, you have the whole concept, okay? And you have a lot of movies doing this, and everybody says the same thing. They look at they see Groundhog Day, then they see Edge of Tomorrow, and they say, hey, that's like Groundhog Day, but like Starship Troopers as well. Then Before I Fall comes out, and they say, hey, it's like a young adult book, but it's like Groundhog Day. And then the trailers for Happy Death Day come out, people are watching Happy Death Day, and they're like, hey, this is like Groundhog Day, only it's like a fucking killer. We get it, okay? You did not have to have one of the last lines of this movie be, hey, you know what this was like? That movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. Do you ever see that? Then they have to take a jab at young people and never say, who's Bill Murray? But, you know, for the most part, yeah, that was completely unneeded. And just drove in the idea of, you know what? I don't think I liked this. I mean, there are some decent fake outs. Like I said, it did have a nice start. There's one scene when she's, fighting him in her room, and there's flashing lights, and it's like, it felt like the climax of Prom Night. It was like, if that's intentional, that's a nice callback. But yeah, it's all just, it really loses itself really fast and goes in all the wrong directions. Ultimately, just to lead up to a really weak ass climax and a really weak ass motive, So, yeah. That's how I felt about that. But if it's got a fan base, you know, good for them. Our next movie is going to be Flatliners, the remake of the 1990 Joel Schumacher movie that star Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, and Julia Roberts, and Oliver Platt. Now we've got Ellen Page, Diego Luna. It's the director of the original Girl with Dragon Tattoo, as well as the very underrated Dead Man Down. Okay, so it's like, okay, a remake of Flatliners was not needed. Like, this is one movie where, like I said, usually I defend remakes because, you know, through a different director's eyes, different cast, it'll be interesting to see. But this is one of those cases where I kind of did jump on the train of, yeah, but Flatliners, of all things, maybe somebody thought there was improvement for Flatliners. Flatliners, the 90 version, certainly is not a perfect movie. In my opinion, it's a very good one, but I mean, if you want to give it a stab, fine. And of course, you know, Ellen Page is the star. That's the thing that really grabbed my attention. So it's like, okay, I mean, I understand she's been doing great indie work lately, so she probably does need a check right about now. So, okay. So I actually went in not expecting to, like, you know, hate it or anything. I went in curious more than anything else. So it was like, okay, so you've got all this stuff. You got the Dragon Tattoo director. You've got people like Ellen Page and Diego Luna in it. If you get your execution decently, you might have something here. If you want to try something a little different. Okay, and they do try something a little different. like, they have, like, the moments when you see, like, they're flying over the town and all that, and they do try to make it a little different. They almost make it like it's a drug. And so there's interesting ideas in here that the other movie didn't go that much into, if at all. And it almost is kind of like they're taking a different approach to it. But the trouble is that approach better or worse? It's worse. But the reason why, which is what we're going to talk about, is the idea... Okay, let's start at the beginning here. The thing about and this is, I mean, what else can you do? This is probably going to be one of those reviews of, this is what the original did, this is what the new one did, but there's a reason. You look at, because the first one did right only highlights what this one's doing wrong, even if it was a standalone movie, even if it wasn't a remake of another movie. It's still something that's wrong. And that is, when you look at the opening scene being Ellen Page getting into a car accident that her little sister dies in, is the opening scene. And so we know what direction this is headed because we saw the original movie, which was the case of there were, even if it didn't result in death, just bad things happened because of the main characters, and this is their chance at redemption because these things literally come back to haunt them. And that ended up going in a direction of, like, it became like a whole redemption kind of thing. So, and the thing about it that worked in the first movie was that we gradually got to know what these things were. There was really nothing right up front that said this is the bad thing, like Kevin Bacon bullied this girl and Kiefer Sutherland accidentally killed this kid. And these are things that are very, very gradually revealed to us. They really take their time to show us what exactly they're being haunted by. So it gives it this, when it gets into thriller mode, and they're being attacked by these forces, like this little kid or this girl, we're not really sure what the fuck's going on. And that's what kind of adds to the freakiness of it. But they clearly have some kind of personal attachment to what's happening to them. But we don't know that as an audience yet. We have to wait for that to unfold. And when this movie starts with Ellen Page getting in a car accident and killing her little sister, it's kind of like, well, we know where this is going. Let's just wait for it to happen now. Well, no surprises here. And they do try that a little bit with the other characters, but it all feels very painfully obvious. And makes the whole redemption angle feel much more artificial than it did before. Not to mention that there's really only, like the Kiersey Clemens character is pretty much the only one we're given any motive to give a shit about, other than Ellen Page. Because it's pretty much, well, the funny thing is that's the opening scene of the movie, but it's not really till she's the haunted aspect of the movie when it's like, we remember that Ellen Page had something shitty happen in her life. It's like, oh yeah, they weren't really even acknowledging that much, and she doesn't seem to be as affected by it, except that she wants to try this death experiment, but there's really... the characters just don't really seem all that motivated by what's actually motivating them. It's just kind of like they're just kind of working through wheels that have already been set for them, which really takes away any power that it had. Like I said, even as cheesy as the first movie can probably seem, it has some really powerful moments with stuff like this. And, you know, and for the most part, they do kind of want to, like... it seems like they less want to do that and more like they want to do, like, a horror approach. They want to do the, they want to make it more horror-y. There's the moments where, like, Ellen Page is home alone after she's done this, after she's had the nice effects of it, and then we realize it's going to get darker. We start seeing shit from Raimi angles. And it's like, the thing about, the whole idea is being confronted by your past. So the visions in the first movie confronted them. They weren't like hiding in the shadows and shit waiting to cause a jump scare or, you know, being ghostly or whatever. They fucking got in their faces and screamed at them and hit them because they wanted to confront them. They weren't trying to be fucking horror movie ghosts. And it, like, really loses the whole thing here when they're, like, hiding in the shadows and shit waiting to jump out. It's like, you know, the reason you're here is to confront. Fucking confront. Scream at her, throw shit at her, make her apologize, make her fucking sorry. Don't just stand in the curtain while the camera lingers and the score ramps up. Fucking, like, the kid used his fucking hockey stick on Kiefer Sutherland, and it's, yeah. And they do kind of, like, it's clear they're trying to kind of do their own thing, whether that's good or bad, but they also want to throw in the stuff, like, the line, Sutherland's first line in the movie is, in the first movie is, it's, what is it, it's a good day to die. Somebody says that, of course. Oh yeah, fucking Kiefer Sutherland's in the movie. he's Ellen Page's boss. He's all their boss. And the thing I thought was, I thought it was like some kind of twist I was witnessing. I wish it had been a surprise. I knew he was in it, like, maybe a couple of weeks before it came out. But I only knew that he was in it. I didn't know exactly who his character was. And he's their boss, and he's the one, like, conducting them, and it's kind of like, my thought process was, is that, like, supposed to be him? Like, is that supposed to be the same character? And it's like, holy shit. I feel like this is the twist that this isn't a remake, it's a fucking sequel? Nah, he's a different character. It's a fucking remake. So, going on that as well, we do have another character here, played by Nina Dobrev. And you'll notice, as almost as kind of like a personal fuck you from this movie to me. Obviously I went in saying, Ellen Page is the star of it. That intrigues me. Even if she's just getting a check, I'm curious what she's going to bring, because I fucking love her. And she's such an interesting actress, so let's see what happens here. And yeah, the movie finds a fucking way to eventually make Nina Dobrev the main focal point of the movie. She basically becomes the main character after a while. It's like, okay, I see all this potential you had, and as I'm watching it, I'm quickly realizing just how badly you're going to squander it. So, and that's a bummer, too. It's not, like, a terrible movie, but it's, like, it does feel like, I mean, there are those moments where, like, it's like they're toying with them, like, the whole experimenting with death thing, like, makes them better, almost, like, just physically and otherwise. It makes them feel, like, powerful and invincible or whatever, like a drug, like I said. And then it's like, but then after a while it starts to feel like it's kind of overcomplicating it. But then once you're trying to figure it out, then you realize, you know what? I think the only reason they've tried to overcomplicate it and tried to add other things to it is they have no other way to kill they have no way to kill time until it's a horror movie again. It's like they're honestly just waiting for the horror movie scenes to happen. So they're just making the characters do random shit until they get to that point. And then yeah, after a while the movie just feels like it's just killing time. And that's kind of a bummer with all the potential it had going into it. And it really feels like it's been missing the atonement angle of the whole story. We do have the scene later where it's like they pretty much completely recreate the Kevin Bacon scene, the apology scene. And then it's like, oh, okay, now you want to do that shit after you've done the whole... There's, like, the scary horror movie faces. There's the moment where Ellen Page gets dragged, like, fucking every movie ever. I think Jennifer Carpenter in Quarantine's the first one that comes to mind, but the horror movie drag, everybody knows what I mean when I fucking say that. So, yeah, just a lot of that, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's like Jigsaw. It's like, I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's just not making some very good decisions, but it never really goes into the territory of, holy shit, this is unbearable. And I know being a remake of a movie that really didn't need to be remade is going to kind of, you know, get a lot of points taken away from most people just on principle, but looking at it as it is, it could have been it really could have been a lot worse. So, I mean, not that excuses it any more or less, but... yeah, it's not that dreadful, so take that for what you will. Our next movie is going to be Friend Request, a movie that's released, this is one of those movies that was like supposed to be released like a year or two ago, and then it just fucking fell off the schedule, and then they released it back in September with Kingsman, so, so like, okay, just take this. So, you look at the title, and you think about the concept, and you're like, wait a minute, isn't this Unfriended? And it's like, I think I'm starting to see why it dropped off the face of the earth now, because it probably would have come, if it was supposed to come out when it was supposed to, it probably would have been right around the time Unfriended came out. And of course, I'm one of those people that actually really liked Unfriended and found it really effective. So it's like, you got a lot to live up to, friend request, and something tells me you're really not going to. So, we start off, and obviously this is one of those movies that was made by, almost feels like it was made by marketing people that just, their whole intent is to appeal to a certain demographic. See the tagline of this movie being, what is it? Evil is trending. Yeah, okay, so I know, that seems like a hypocritical criticism coming from somebody that just said, I really liked Unfriended. But it's like, you seriously could just do the same thing with this movie. It's just, it didn't have that really cool, only on the computer screen effect, and it didn't have the legitimately freaky scenes that are in that. And the build-up, and the, real feeling terror that movie had, in my opinion. No, we're just gonna kind of get some of the same old bullshit with this. Starting with the old, let's start at a point in the movie that's like right in the middle, and then come back to that. Even though it's a moment that we pretty much know is going to happen because we know the fucking concept of the movie. Obviously the concept of the movie is, there's the girl that's like the outcast that nobody likes, and she's kind of a freak, and wears her hood, and she's kind of looks really menacing, and her Facebook's got a lot of freaky shit on it, and she's got literally 0 friends on there. So it becomes like the cable guy, and she makes one friend, one kind of popular person. She's supposed to be the most popular girl in school, because she's got 800 friends on Facebook. That's how you know she's popular, apparently. So, and they become friends, and then she gets fucking weird, and then she's like, oh, let's not be friends, and she unfriends her, and then she fucking kills herself, and then obviously her spirit's gonna run around rampant, killing everybody. And the movie starts with them finding out about her suicide. Then we go back, and we start from the beginning, when she first met her. What is that supposed to do? Like, what kind of effect is this approach supposed to have? Is it supposed to be grabbing? Is it supposed to pull us in? Well, here's an idea. Why don't you make the characters interesting enough to pull us in, and start with them? Because as the movie goes on, there's so fucking many of them, and most of them are so useless, we don't really know who's who, and what their connection is to other people, and why this person's so upset that this person got brutally murdered. I don't know. Apparently this person is dating this person has some connection with this person might be friends with this person, but it doesn't matter, because we're just waiting for them to die anyway. And the movie instead wanted to show us shit that we're going to see later anyway, to start with, instead of, I don't know, starting with the goddamn characters. But, whatever. So it goes on, and yeah, for the first part is the kind of fatal attraction kind of thing, only it's friendship. And this girl decides that she wants to be friends forever with this popular girl. And they do try to their credit, they try to have a little style. There are those kind of cool scenes when we're looking at her Facebook and we see like her cover picture and we see like her profile picture, and it zooms in, and when we zoom into the picture it goes into like real life, like the day the picture was shot, and it kind of like turns into a movie picture and we go into it and all that, and it's like, okay, this is stylish. This is the director trying to be, give the movie some character, give it some flash or something. And then there's some effective moments that are kind of creepy and unsettling, like when we see the shit that's on her freaky-ass Facebook page. And it's like, well, this is kind of legitimately... it's kind of like the images in The Ring on the tape. And so that kind of sets an interesting mood and kind of sets you in the idea. It's like, okay, bring on more of this. I kind of like feeling this freaked out. As long as it stays this effective. And then we get the stuff like when she starts sending the frantic messages. And it's like we start to realize how really damn unstable she is. And it really starts to feel like the movie's kind of, got us on an edge like this. And then what we already know happens because the first scene happens. And then it's a fucking shitty-ass ghost movie. It's like... and then it goes from there, and once again, it's like basically the plot is populated with a whole bunch of idiotic people, where there's something clearly going on here, but it has to be the whole. The idea is to make every character turn on the popular girl so that she's not popular anymore, and it's like the ultimate revenge to make her into what the girl was. But this all comes about from the old bullshit, like, trying to explain what's going on and nobody believes her, all that shit, and how much they drag that out. And then and obviously it goes into the whole, do horror enthusiasts ever feel like they're watching the same damn movie over and over again when we have those scenes when you have to go in and investigate a person that's dead, that's causing paranormal shit, and we get their whole backstory through files and, like, birth records. Birth records, you have to break into the office and find them, and it's like, it's always fucking birth records, and they're always so easy to break in and steal. It's the same goddamn scene and same goddamn development in, like, every single movie like this ever. And they're not even remotely trying to change it up whatsoever. And we have to watch all this same shit happen that we've seen over and over and over again. And get that damn backstory exposition, get the same damn scene where the random friend goes to investigate and gets fucking brutally killed. And then it's just... And it's just none of it's working after a while, and it just feels like the same old shit over and over again. There are some effectively creepy scenes, rarely, like, the death scene of the dude that goes to investigate is surprisingly brutal. It is very reminiscent of, remember Case 39? Bradley Cooper's death scene in Case 39 is kind of like this scene. Like I said, for the shitty, way the movie's been up to this point and very by the numbers, it's kind of jarringly, unexpected how brutal this scene is. And this is actually a movie where we like being jarred. We want to be jarred. But it's very rare that it happens. And then, the kids with, like, the wasp stings on their faces just walk. They have, like, that march-like walk about them. They're fucking creepy. So stuff like that is effective. But for the most part... it's just the same old shit over and over again. The movie is like an hour and a half, like a straight hour and a half. Feels really like I got so damn tired of watching this. Like, you have no idea how tired of this movie I was by the time it was over, and it felt like it took fucking forever. But it's just your basic hour and a half. Same length as Jigsaw, same length as Happy Death Day. It felt like an eternity, this movie. Because it's just all the same shit. So, and yeah, talking about the stupid characters, it's kind of like, her account is the one that's like, like she adds somebody and then that person gets killed. But then it's like, people don't and then she's explaining, and she's like, but this, and they're like, oh, no, we don't believe you, you're a piece of shit, And they just ignore, but it's like, nobody thinks about the fact that this account of a dead person is adding people. People can see this publicly. No red flags, no alarm whatsoever. No, she's making everything up. So we can drag our runtime out. Be the same old shitty horror movie that most of the others are. There's really hardly any movie. There's no reason for this movie to exist. The director's name is, what, Simon Verhoeven? I had to do a check on that. He's related to a director named Paul Verhoeven, but it's not that Paul Verhoeven. There's another director out there named Paul Verhoeven. I had no idea, and this guy's related to him. but it's not the Paul Verhoeven we know. So that's weird and confusing. But let's keep going, because we've still got 3 more. Our next movie is going to be Leatherface. A movie I didn't realize even existed until it was available. I knew it was, they were gonna make another Leatherface movie. I didn't realize the fucking thing had been made. And that it was already ready to go on, what was that, October 12th or something? It was a couple of weeks ago. And you wonder, do we need... you often wonder, do we need origin stories? Most of the time the answer is no, especially if the whole effectiveness of the character is the fact that their origins are unknown, or we know enough about their origins, but there's still a blurriness there that gives them a mysterious background that we don't know, and God knows what it is when you see a character like fucking Leatherface, in like women's clothing and lipstick and high heels and fucking crazy ass everything, doesn't speak, just speaks in like these freaky ass noises, and it's like he just exists. That's what makes him so fucking scary, is he just exists, and he's like that. There is nothing you could possibly say about this guy's origin that will be scarier than the fact that he is. That he exists. There's nothing you can do. Especially not something that's like straight to VOD. No fucking way whatsoever. Once again, like Jeepers Creepers, I think it got like a small theatrical release, but for the most part it's on the fucking streaming and VOD shit. Where it fucking belongs. So the whole story is set off... Well, actually, there's a couple of stories here, but one of them is set off when this girl, who is a ridiculously good Samaritan, decides to stop off the side of the road because there's a freaky-ass kid standing in the middle of the road wearing a freaky-ass mask that is a cow's head with a hole in its forehead. She's like, but this kid needs help. This kid needs help. And so he runs off, and what does she do? This freaky-ass looking kid in the middle of nowhere with a freaky-ass mask. Well, I gotta chase after him because he needs help. So, she pays the price for that, and it fucking serves her right. With that kind of setup. But it turns out that she's the daughter of Stephen Dorff. And Stephen Dorff is the guy that's in all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. The crazy-ass law enforcement guy. The crazy-ass cop. Whose name is Hartman. He shares a name with the crazy-ass sheriff in the last Texas Chainsaw movie played by Paul Ray. I don't know if it was mentioned in dialogue, but I'm going to assume their characters are supposed to be related. So, there's that. It's a connection. Doesn't really mean a whole lot. So, it goes on. Maybe there's more. I haven't seen Texas Chainsaw since the theater, and I saw this like a couple of weeks ago, so maybe there's more of a connection there. I can't quite remember, but whatever. So we go on that, and he wants revenge, obviously, because that. Now, the other side of this is we have the character Jed, who we know is going to be Leatherface. We get his starting point. We get his first scene where he's like has a birthday party, but he can't bring himself to use the chainsaw, so we get Grandpa using his hammer, because the original movie did that. And this is supposed to be, like, goes right into that one or whatever. So, we do have an effective Lily Taylor in here. As part of the Sawyer clan, so there is that. But then we jump forward, and now Jed is in this institution. But the problem here is that everybody is going by a different name. So Jed has yet to be identified, but what we have here is a nurse, one crazy-ass guy and his crazy-ass girlfriend, the guy that's kind of crazy but also kind of charming guy, and the really big dude with the crazy hair that doesn't speak and looks very, very threatening. So you're basically making your audience say, well, we know which one Jed is. End of story, let's watch the movie. Doesn't care, he's called fucking Bud. And our cool dude here is Jackson, I think, and I don't even remember the names of the other fox. And it eventually turns into a... I don't know if you can call it a road movie, but it's funny how when Rob Zombie made House of 1,000 Corpses and Devil's Rejects, he was so clearly taking notes from Tobe Hooper with the original movie, and now it's like this movie is taking notes from fucking The Devil's Rejects. So it's just full circle, but just a full circle of pointlessness when you look at the outcome of this bullshit. And the rest of the movie is basically half Stephen Dorff doing his revenge thing, doing his William Forsythe and Devil's Rejects thing, doing his Crazy Cops and all the other movies. It reminded me how much I really liked Paul Ray's character in Texas Chainsaw. Like, he's the normal evil sheriff guy that we see in all these. But his character made that movie. He made that movie as entertaining as it was. He was certainly a more entertaining villain than whatever they had Leatherface doing in that. And to think that this is likely, like, probably his father or something, it's like, okay, but the thing is that the Paul Ray character, what made him so entertaining is the way he was just kind of loose about the whole thing, and how he wasn't kind of trying to play up this whole big thing. He's just a fucking bad guy. That's all it is. Like, he wasn't supposed to be scary, because that was Leatherface's job. He's just a bad dude, but it was in kind of it was like a fun and amusing way. Like the moment when the girl popped out of the freezer and the cops just kind of instinctively shot her, and he just said, we'll pretend that didn't happen. It's like, but no, Dorf's character is like driven by this constant anger, and he's that character. Because Forsyth in Devil's Rejects was the same character, but there was still something really entertaining about him. There's nothing against Dorf's performance. I mean, he's good. Like, he's actually good in this, but the thing is that it's like, it's just such a boring character, because it's just the whole, I want blood, revenge guy, and there's not a whole lot else he adds to it. And that's not Dorf, that's the fucking writing. So, so there's really not much to that we didn't already see done much better in cases like, for instance, Forsyth in The Devil's Rejects. It's just a very kind of outline version of that role, and that part, and that whole storyline, really. So, now we just have to watch them walk through Bud and Jackson, the nurse, and these two crazy fucks. And the movie becomes, look how crazy everybody is. Remember the South Park episode with Crazy Kenny? I felt like that guy was narrating the movie every time these guys were on screen. It's like, all they do is fuck. There's one scene where they're fucking on top of a corpse, and then she starts tonguing the corpse. And it's like, ooh, you're fucking edgy, you're fucking gross out, you're fucking, oh my god, how crazy, how sick and twisted. And it's like, you're just treading the same ground. You have to be a really bad, boring-ass movie for a girl to be fucking on top of a corpse and tonguing it, and make your audience say, well, this is boring shit we've seen before. And it's like, how bad do you have to be to not make that effective at least a little bit? But no, it just feels really tired, and then we get to the whole thing with, okay, here's the thing. We're going into kind of spoilery territory here, so I'll warn you about that. But I imagine most people who are going to see this probably have, since it's so accessible. But here's the thing, is what they clearly wanted to do here was have a twist. Because you've got the legit crazy people, then you've got the kind of crazy, kind of cool guy, and you've got the big, silent dude. And it's like, they're clearly trying to point you in one direction of which one Jed is. But of course, it's a fake out. And it's actually fucking Jackson. And so it's like, okay, so here's what I gather. There's really nothing throughout the whole movie that Jackson has done to remotely indicate this whatsoever. I know one of the things about psychopaths is that they can fucking, like, hide themselves. But here's the thing, is that you look at fucking Leatherface. Fucking look at him. This is supposed to go right into the original movie. Okay, go back and look at the original movie and look at fucking Leatherface. I'm always supposed to buy that one character goes into the other. And it's like, so what he does here is he gets fucking shot. So he has to have his fucking jaw closed, and that's why he fucking wigs out when he just fucking grunts creepily. And so it's like and they're so clearly trying to play up that switch, that it's like Jackson basically said, okay, so now that my jaw's shut, and I guess I'm crazy now because Lily Taylor said I am, this is going to be my life now. I'm going to wear faces and shit. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look like Bud. I'm going to act like Bud. I'm going to kill like Bud. I'm going to be silent like Bud. And it's like, that's what I'm going to do. And that's how Leatherface is born. It's just like, it's almost, I don't know. Like, he clearly, no. And the thing is, like, I understand wanting to do your own thing. But I mean, it's like, because you wanted a twist, you have now made this whole thing really fucking stupid and pointless, because there is just no believability whatsoever that this fucking character, is the character that we see later, which was the whole damn point of this movie, was to say, this is how Leatherface was born, this is the shit that made that fucking creepy-ass shit we saw in the original movie. No, not even close. And here's the thing, is the whole problem with the movie is that not only is it a suck-ass Leatherface origin story, if this weren't a Leatherface movie, like if it wasn't him turning into Leatherface, if the whole movie was exactly as it is, only, like, Leatherface didn't exist until now, like no Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies existed until now, this would still be a shit movie. It would be completely ineffective try-hard bullshit. Even without that stuff. So it's just the cherry on top that you make it a shitty origin story to a character, one of the scariest characters in horror movie history, because we don't really know how the fuck he came to be like that. The closest we can come to is fucking inbreeding. But even then, it's like, holy fucking shit. Still, look at the guy. That is insane. That is crazy. So yeah, it's just all around this movie was a bad idea. Almost every direction they could take it was just, no. It just doesn't work whatsoever in any aspect. Standalone, franchise movie, origin story, none of it works. So, yeah. Okay. Our next one's going to be Amityville: The Awakening, because we were all clamoring for another Amityville movie. This is another one like Friend Request, where this was on the schedule like 2 years ago. Then it's supposed to come out like one Halloween, and they're like, no, we'll move it to January. And then that January, and they're like, no, we'll put it in like fucking July or something. And it moved around a lot. And then finally they put it on like fucking, what was it, Google Play for free. And it's just very amusing when you look at this movie's life. It's all the way up to it being released. So, obviously, it's been like 3 years in the making or something. And this is what it all came down to. And it's like you can clearly see how unimportant it was to pretty much everybody involved. That they didn't even care when it came out. They just started throwing it around. And so we've got, weirdly enough though, we've got a recognizable cast. Jennifer Jason Leigh is in this. Kurtwood Smith is in this. Our lead character basically is Bella Thorne, which she's shown in this movie shows. The thing about Bella Thorne is that obviously she's one of those Disney actresses, and she's doing the whole thing where like she goes around in public and acts like a fucking dumbass. But when you watch her in movies, it's kind of like there's something there. There's a talented actress in her that you would never suspect looking at what else she does. So it's not a bad setup when you look at the cast list. We also got Cameron Monaghan, who's known for playing, who's inevitably going to be the Joker on Gotham, among other things. Who has a striking resemblance to Lucas Hedges, if I say so myself. And we start off, and we're basically just doing another Amityville movie, but the different thing here is that, remember that terrible, dreadful Town That Dreaded Sundown movie, when they basically remade it, only the original movie existed in the world of the new movie? It was doing a meta thing. Well, this is that too. Every Amityville movie that's been made actually exists in this movie's universe. Like Thomas Mann shows up and he says, we're going to watch the Amityville movies, I'm going to show you what happened. Like the real story and the movie adaptations are in this world. And she's moved into this house, and Thomas Mann is saying, watch these movies that are based on the house you live in. So there's kind of something there, but it's also kind of like the whole meta thing is a bit played out. They do they rag on the Ryan Reynolds remake. And it's basically there just to kind of try to do the meta thing. There's really nothing particularly put to use in regards to that setup. And it really just continues to do nothing new once again, just like I talked about with Friend Request. This is another one of those fucking let's investigate the background shit. But the thing is that we already know all the Amityville shit. We just have to wait for the characters to learn about it. So we got to watch all this shit happen. So a lot of the movie feels like not a lot's happening. It's just every now and then there's a random jump scare, mostly involving the fact that Cameron Monaghan earned his paycheck because he spends the whole movie in bed not being able to move. He's like in a coma, or he's barely conscious, but because we have to have him like doing the contorting thing in flashes, because that's what she sees. That's the jump scare thing we're using. He gets his screen time in, even though his character's almost practically in a coma. And that's where a lot of the horror comes from. And there are some effective moments, even some of the jump scenes. Like there's the scene when he's talking on his Stephen Hawking machine or whatever he's got, and he's like saying, hey, nobody's around, and you can see what I'm like. Just unplug me, like just do it, make it look like an accident or something. Just do it. And so we do this thing, and she goes, and she's gonna do it, but obviously he's possessed by this point because he's in a fucking Amityville movie and he's doing jump scares and shit. But the thing is that so we're expecting that he's on his last legs to where he's begging to die, assisted suicide here, and he's down. He's like down for the count, and so she's doing all this and she's doing all this, and then he jumps up, and it's a jump scare. But that's actually really effectively done because we have the initial setup that he's down for the count. We're not expecting that to happen at this rate. So stuff like that is okay. And there's some stuff that's kind of, a bit unsettling. I like the moment when, once she realizes the history of the house, she pulls back the wallpaper in her bedroom and realizes that the bloodstains are still there. They've just been covered up with the new wallpaper. That's kind of cool in like a poltergeist, you didn't move the bodies kind of way. And they do have some themes in here, like the whole, like Jennifer Jason Leigh is basically obsessed with him and caring for him and keeping him alive to the point that she neglects the daughters. And there's something there. There's something character-driven and human there. But really, the movie is just kind of a bunch of long drags of them doing the investigation bullshit and waiting for jump scares to happen and just talking about the shit we already know about. And that's pretty much the extent of what it is, which really just... Yeah, I wouldn't call it good, but it's not like it was unsalvageable, which kind of makes it worse, because it's like they could have expanded on some more stuff, done some more effective things, but this just feels very, like, easily churned out. Like, very... Let's just make it do all the easy shit and send this movie on its way, and then they didn't even fucking care about when it came out. So the lack of care is very apparent, not just when you look at its release schedule, but when you watch it too, which is a shame since it looked like it maybe had some hope in some scenes, but... Yeah, but the thing about it too, to base my opinion on this, I should probably mention, is that I was never big on the Amityville movies anyway. I think the original with James Brolin and Mario Kidder is... I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember being really bored with it. I remember feeling like just not a damn thing was happening. Not even in a good tension-building way, just nothing. Then they tried to take the whole like prequel approach and tried to do all this shit. And then the Ryan Reynolds remake, which is fine, basically might as well be as much a remake of The Shining as it is the Amityville Horror, so... I was really just never big on these movies anyway, so... And this is just another product of them that's just... out there for whatever reason. Nobody really knows. I don't think anybody even cares anymore, so yes, let's finally get to the last movie, which is another year, another goddamn fucking Sharknado piece of shit. This one's called Global Swarming, and the S in Sharknado is a 5. So, we go on and we do, once again, it's, every time I review this movie, it's the same review every time, so let's just get through this quickly. Ian Ziering shows up, Tara Reid shows up, another storm comes, this one based from Stonehenge, and apparently Sharknadoes go back through all of history, and here's this thing that can, like, teleport them from one place to another, from one country to another. Ian Ziering says the line, "Same shark, different day." There's the moment when they reuse the Ferris wheel bullshit from the first movie when it broke and started going away, and it's like, oh, you're reusing bullshit now. And Ian Ziering and Tara Reid look at each other and say, deja vu. And it's like a nice excuse for using the same bullshit. Just have the characters point out that it's the same bullshit as I fall asleep watching it. And 21 minutes of this goes by. 21 entire minutes go by. And then we get our opening credits. And the opening credits showed me that there was a little bit of hope, because for the first time in this series, I think, it's a different writer. Same director, different writer. And it's like, oh no, a sliver of hope. Let's see what happens. So it goes on, and the main plot is the fact that their kid in his stupid little fin helmet gets sucked up into a Sharknado. For some reason, he doesn't die, because he's the main character's kid, and the rest of the movie has to be them saving him. There it is, him and his stupid goddamn helmet. So, then they, obviously, they do the thing, and they teleport from one place to the other, and so on. And obviously, when they get to the different countries, they have to do the obvious bullshit. Like, when they're in England, they're in London specifically, and a bridge falls down. So what does the kid have to say? But, oh no, London Bridge is falling down. And it's like, that's so stupid, it's actually funny. No, it stops at the stupid thing. And the whole is supposed to be thing. Why do I have, do we really have to do this same review every time? And this isn't my fault. Owen insists on this, and he owns the fucking channel, so that's why I do it. So don't say, why do I even bother? Ask fucking him, okay? Don't bother me with it. He already bothers me with having to watch these. So the thing here is, it's the whole, oh, but it's supposed to be stupid thing. And it's like, well, here's the thing, is when a movie is so bad it's good, that's typically because the person that makes it thinks it's good when it's actually terrible. If you set out to make it just bad, you're a fucking fraud piece of shit that's trying way too hard to get a very easy fan base by being as fucking lazy as possible. And just throwing shit in there just because. And as always, completely goes against that by, after a while, it's like they actually seem to think they're actually they start to actually convince themselves they're making some badass monster movie. And so everything actually starts to get taken seriously. They kill off a couple of major characters, but it's like, number one, if you fucking skydive into a Sharknado, yeah, you're gonna fucking die like an idiot. And they actually play this up as genre, and it's not like, oh, they're doing a take. They're doing a send-up of the dramatic death scenes. No, by this point, I think we're supposed to take these deaths quite seriously, because these characters have been in the whole franchise, and everything is played up super serious. And these movies are not subtle enough for that to be satire. These movies want to be right up in your face with the, it's supposed to be bad, just laugh at us and be a goddamn sheep and go along with it, so we can make 10 more of these goddamn fucking things, and be even more lazy every time they come around. To be fair, the other ones are so fucking lazy they're boring, and while this one is certainly lazy and just as bottom of the barrel, it at least feels like something is happening in the scenes. Like, the other ones they really draw out the pointless references and the cameos, and it's like, here, it's like, Ian Ziering's still going on this whole, everybody he co-starred with on The Apprentice is going to be in a Sharknado movie. We've got Clay Aiken doing an English accent. We've got Geraldo building some giant machine. We got Bret Michaels playing himself. Gilbert Gottfried comes back as the news guy. And it's like, I guess at least they didn't dwell on those like they have before. The Bret Michaels one goes on for way too long, and is completely idiotic. Tara Reid is still incredibly awful. Unironically, by the way. So, there's, like, you can't put Tara Reid in a movie and say she's doing the bad acting on purpose. It's like, you cannot get away with that shit. Don't even try to pull that shit. And so, yeah, there's still, it's still completely, Sorry. It still doesn't stop us from getting completely bored with their very poor attempt at camp and spoof and whatever the fuck. Because they don't know. Just repeat. Just play it back and forth over and over and over again. So yes, and they clearly never learn. Like, all the stuff that makes the other ones bad, not supposed to be bad, just fucking bad, and fucking no effort whatsoever. And once again, and then it seems like they're actually trying to make some badass movie, and they never learn because every same damn movie goes down that path. It's like they never actually stick with the whole... It hardly even feels like spoof anymore. It actually is starting to feel legitimately like trying to make something good and they're making it bad, which usually results in a so bad it's good movie, which is what I just said. But the thing here is that there are some movies that are so bad they are just goddamn bad, and this is where these movies lie and always will. I don't know what they could possibly do to actually make one of these worth watching. Maybe one of these days they'll try. God knows they're going to keep fucking going. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, I think I am done with all this. So, yes. Tomorrow, you're going to have Thor Ragnarok, as well as Despicable Me 3, Cars 3, the Lego Ninjago movie, and the Emoji movie. And then there is a Versus. So... yes, and then hopefully things will be back to normal, and all I have to do is 2 videos a week. It'd be lovely to get back to that, so... Not that I don't love entertaining the few of you that show up, but... yeah, when it's stuff like Sharknado and the Emoji Movie, I would much rather do this as... like the people that make Sharknado. Just put as little fucking effort into everything as possible. That would be the great thing, but, yes. So, all of that. So, that's, yeah, this has gone on way long enough, so,